while nobles feasted on roasted swans. Peasants had something better, a thriving fast food machine that could fill you up for less than a copper. And here's the twist. Historians gloss over those medieval restaurants, ran a business model so sharp that McDonald's basically reenacted it 8 centuries later. Peasant fast food started with a mind-bender. They ate the plate. Trenchers thick slabs of stale bread carved into bowls, were the original edible dinnerware. Not a gimmick. A necessity. Yesterday's loaf was hard enough to cradle soup or stew, without collapsing like a soggy napkin. And smarter still, it soaked up juices as you ate. By the last bite, you had a sauce-rich hunk of bread that doubled as dessert. No running water, no cheap soap, no time to scrub after working from sunrise to dusk, so the cleanup plan was simple. Eat the meal, eat the plate, done. Street vendors in places like London snapped it up fast. No bowls to lose. No stacks of dirty crockery. Trenchers worked like disposable packaging with zero waste unless you tossed one to the dogs or handed it to a beggar. Most of the time, it went straight down the hatch, adding sorely needed calories. 2 courses in one. Quick, efficient, perfect for anyone who had to eat and move, and to wash it down. Not coffee. Small buyer. Before you picture farmers wobbling through wheat fields, know this. Small beer was the Middle Ages Gatorade, just enough alcohol, roughly 2 to 3%, to tame the bacteria lurking in iffy water. Think water purification, with better flavor. Everyone drank it, kids, expectant mothers, monks, the whole village, dawn to dusk. A typical peasant downed 3 to 4 pints a day, which sounds wild until you remember their water could put you in the ground. Brewing was fast, too. Forget weeks of temperamental craft batches. Small buyer was ready in 3 to 5 days. Housewives became expert brewers because survival demanded it, spinning grain into liquid calories, faster than you can say Budweiser. That's the other genius. Every sip carried energy for bodies, burning through thousands of calories in the fields. Grain that might spoil became something stable, useful, and drinkable. Waste not, want not, get slightly buzzed in the process. Regions had their signatures. Oats up north, barley farther south, and families guarded recipes like treasure, sharing small beer-knit communities tighter than any team-building retreat. A little daily relaxation soothed tempers and smoothed out disputes. Best of all, it was everywhere, anytime. No packaging, no chilling, no expiry dates. Fill your leather flask and go. For hard days, nothing beat medieval pies, portable lunchboxes with attitude. Instead of delicate, flaky pastry that shatters at a sigh, bakers wrapped fillings in coffin crusts. Thick, armored shells that shrugged off bumpy cart rides and still kept lunch intact. Medieval Tupperware you could eat. Inside went whatever protein the purse allowed, beef or pork when luck smiled, pigeon, rabbit, or smaller birds when it didn't. One London Bakers Guild record from the 1300s even notes humble pie deer, organs out selling regular meat pies among working people. Simple economics. Organ meat was cheaper but still protein-dense enough to power a day of toil. The design was brilliant for hygiene, too. That hefty rim worked as a handle, so miners and laborers could eat one-handed with dirty fingers without contaminating the good stuff. Regional rivals popped up like franchises. Yorkshire had a style. Cornwall perfected another. London competed on recipes and local ingredients shaped filling trends. Wrapped in cloth, a pie stayed warm for hours. Tuck one in your pouch at dawn, and lunch was waiting, no reheating required. Market ledgers don't lie. On busy days, meat pies outsold bread loaves, 3 to 1. Convenience beat sit-down dining back then, too. When time was tighter, oatcakes took over. The medieval pancake breakfast, only faster, denser, and tougher. A bit of oats and water on a flat piece of metal over open flame, and you had fuel in minutes. No fancy oven, no long ingredient list, clean eating. Centuries before a trend, flatbreads also doubled as plates. Why dirty dishes when you can eat them? Slap on leftover meat scraps, cheese, even a smear of lard and keep moving. Fires became pop-up kitchens. Harvest crews cooked at field edges. Shepherds on windy hillsides. Vendors in market squares with nothing more than a brazier and a griddle. At festivals they were perfect, quick to make, easy to share, warm long enough for everyone to grab one between dances. Communities tore and passed pieces around, loading them with whatever the group had gathered. Social media before social media. And like any great staple, regional styles flourished. Scottish thicker versions. Welsh blends with different grains, each area putting its own twist on the same brilliant blueprint. Wrapped in cloth, a stack became trail food that actually filled you up. Utensils optional. Then came the Cornish pasty, The lunch that would make modern food scientists cheer. A die-shaped parcel of engineering and pastry, built for mines and moors. That thick crimp wasn't decoration. It was a purpose-made handle so tin miners could grip with filthy hands and keep the filling clean. The crust was so rugged, you could drop it down a mineshaft and still eat it. Thanks to that dense pastry armor, pasties stayed hot for hours tucked under a shirt at dawn, steaming at noon. Inside, beef, potato, swede, and onion turned into a self-steaming, chamber-pure medieval food science. Families had signature crimps, like edible fingerprints, and some bakers stamped initials right into the crust. Personal branding, circa 1300, nothing wasted leftover vegetables, meat scraps. Yesterday's potatoes sealed into a single, indestructible meal. Shepherds on the high ground, farmers in the fields, workers on short breaks all could eat one-handed. Some miners even tore off part of the crust for the knockers, the spirits they credited with keeping them safe underground. A supernatural tip jar, paid in pastry. Regional spins spread everywhere, divine with cream, sweeter versions with apples, herb-heavy, savory variants. But the core design never failed. When winter sharpened its teeth, roasted chestnuts owned the streets. Vendors set up like tactical operators markets. Church steps, busy crossroads where cold, hungry crowds gathered. Their entire food truck was a brazier and nerve. Chestnuts were cheap, abundant, naturally packaged. Toss them on coals till the shells split, and you had warmth in your hands and sustenance in your pocket. The show sold them as much as the taste. The crackle, the smoke ribboning down cobbles, the quick wrist flip over the glow pure theater, long before anyone coined brand experience. Overhead, almost nothing. A small cart, a sack of nuts, charcoal, reliable income all winter. People lingered around the heat, sharing gossip and news. Those braziers became social hubs. Nature's timing helped chestnuts ripen right when temperatures plunged with proper storage. The supply lasted for months. The shells acted like built-in packaging, keeping the meat clean until you cracked it. The waste was biodegradable before anyone used the word. And they weren't just snacks. Carbohydrates, protein, vitamins, affordable comfort with real fuel. Mornings demanded something even faster than a baker's queue, and cheaper than yesterday's trencher. Enter gruel, and porridging glands instant breakfast. Not fancy rolled oats, just whatever grain survived the winter. Barley oats, rye boiled with water until it turned into something spoonable. It wasn't about taste, it was about power. One bowl could carry you through hours of hard labor. Bread went stale, the pot stayed warm for hours. The method was brilliant. Toss grain in a cauldron, add water, stir when you had a minute between chores. No recipes, no guilt secrets, no special gear. Even the poorest family could manage it. Regions kept boredom at bay with tweaks. Northern villages threw in hardy vegetables. Southern kitchens sweetened with honey or preserved fruit. The Welsh reached for leeks because of course they did. On freezing mornings, a scalding bowl felt like luxury. Sweet versions held down breakfast. Savory batches doubled as dinner. Thin it to soup, thicken it to a rib-sticking meal. Add a scrap of bacon fat, a cheese rind, an egg when the hens cooperated. Big pots meant sharing, and breakfast became a village moment. Gossip rising with the steam. By evening, the whole community could rally around the star that stretched ingredients into miracles. Pot, the medieval slow cooker. Everything goes in, hope for the best, somehow gets something good. Peasants started a stock pot at dawn, then let it bubble while they mended thatch or hoed fields. Anything qualified: wilted cabbage, half-rotten turnips, a bone with 3 specks of meat. Ingredient roulette, but it worked. Medieval cookbooks, yes. They existed even if most peasants couldn't read them. Called it a mess of pottage, and mess was honest. It wasn't pretty, it was survival, that happened to taste decent when you were hungry enough. The long simmer was the secret. Unlike fast food that needs attention now, pottage was set at stir occasionally, add water when it thickens, toss in herbs if you feel fancy. It fed more than a household, it fed the clan, and whoever wandered by. Hospitality meant the pot had to stretch. More guests just meant more water. Seasons rewrote the recipe. Spring greens and early shoots, summer garden overload, winter root stores, and whatever preserved meat hadn't given up. Ironically, modern nutritionists would probably applaud slow-cooked vegetables and bone broth built sturdy bodies. Northern kitchens loved barley-thick versions that could stand up by themselves. Southern cooks leaned lighter, more brothy. Families kept secret. Twists, usually something wild and local that wouldn't kill you. Sharing from the same pot did more than feed bellies. It settled arguments, sealed matches, and reminded everyone what kept them alive. A bubbling cauldron of survival, community, And hoped up by midday, the town square turns into a roaring food court, smoke lacing the air, hawkers shouting over each other, skewers hissing, knives thudding on worn boards. Location is everything, so they crowd church doors, gatehouses, crossroads, any place where purses jingle and stomachs growl. The scent strategy is lethal. Roasting meat sends invisible billboards down alleys. Fresh loaves trail a warm, yeasty signal, stronger than any painted sign. Without ice houses or magic cooling rooms, spoilage isn't a bad review, it's a burial. So the rule is brutal and simple. Cook fresh, sell fast, or make it last. City officials actually police it. Watered ale, short-weight loaves, suspect meat, fines, stocks, even worse. Dawn births bread. Mid-morning the grills flare. By noon the whole plaza is a percussion line of sizzling, chopping, and prices barked until the bells ring. Preservation is the empire's backbone. Salt is the white gold rubbed deep into pork until it looks snowed on, hung to dry, turned rock hard and safe. The crystal sucks out moisture, starves the nasties, and suddenly your dinner can ride out winter. Butchers massage every crevice, sometimes with herbs for a sharper bite. The result travels with knights and caravans, tough as leather, ironclad against time. When pickling takes over, vinegar becomes a chemist. Onions, cucumbers, cabbage, even fish sink into a sour bath that outstares decay and comes up tangy, bright, and addictive. Big ceramic crocks in cool cellars whisper while they work. Weeks later those jars open like treasure chests, sharp, layered with flavor. Salt merchants get rich in guarded routes, watched like gold convoys because salt keeps families alive when fields sleep under frost. And it's not just survival. A fresh chop and a salt-curd ham aren't cousins. They're different worlds' necessity, inventing entirely new tastes. Portability changes everything. Pastry becomes armor, a thick coffin crust sealed around savory fillings. Airtight, bacteria kept out, moisture locked in with a cap of rendered fat. Crack the shell, eat the heart, feed the dogs, the rest or don't. Hunger doesn't care about etiquette. Street piemen march with trays like mobile kitchens, camping outside church steps when services end, capturing the hungry river of worshippers. A pork pie lasts longest, fat congeals, and shields so travelers bite London and finish York on the same ration. It's early packaging with a shelf life born from common sense. Quality swings. Sure, some rogues stuff anything that moves, but wardens lurk and laws bite back. Meanwhile, bread stays the daily lifeline. Bakers knead by candlelight, slap rounds into hot mouths of communal ovens, and haul out dense, hearty loaves that work as bowls, plates, and ballast. Trenches carry stew, then become the final course. Guild weights keep cheats honest, because a light loaf is a public shame you wear around your neck. And ale, it's not decadence, it's plumbing. Small beer flows safer than the well, brewed soft and quick. Weaker than tavern swill, but strong enough to tame what's in the water. Children sip it, monks bless it, laborers demand it with their wage. Bread plus beer is the combo meal that never fails. Crust preserves itself. Hops and alcohol hold the line, and no one needs a cold room. Bakers hedge production, selling yesterday's hard heels for trenchers and puddings. The rich flaunt pale loaves while common hands break dark rounds that actually feed. When taste needs fireworks, spices ride in like cavalry. Pepper scorches and forbids rot. Cinnamon makes fruit last and glow. Cloves punch above their weight, tiny buds that bully decay into retreat. Garlic with rosemary, thyme with sage, these blends hum with flavor and quietly extend time. Wars flare for these jars because winter respects no one, and a pinch means dinner in February. Then the invisible workforce clocks in. Fermentation becomes the quiet miracle that turns danger into insurance. Cabbage meets salt and patience, transforms into kraut that tastes brighter than the raw leaf, and endures the cold months without complaint. Milk curdles obediently under the right cultures. Wheels age into currencies you can eat, and cellars smell of promise. Fish goes funky in the right way. Grain becomes liquid bread that steadies whole parishes. North leans into kraut and soured dairy. South cures olives and brews sharp sauces. Climate writes recipes and generations memorize them. The side effect no one names is health guts, made sturdier by friendly microbes. Though they just call it good food and keep stirring. Trade ties it all together like a belt around the world's waist. Caravans creak across dust and snow, carrying jars that still taste alive at the far end. A merchant leaving Constantinople brings pickled fish, aged cheese, dried fruit, and returns with new tricks for preserving and spicing that monasteries jot into tidy hands. The routes aren't random waypoints picked for salt purity. dry storage, clean water, and safe cellars, and secret spreads slower than gossip, but just as surely. A crimped pie edge here, a brining ratio there, a ferment that sings in a different climate. Within a lifetime, local tastes like a dozen other places combined. Some cities end up with more international eating than modern towns, with 3 takeaways on a corner. And in the end, dishes we swear are ancient and rooted turn out to be migrants with fresh names and old souls. Proof that the medieval fast food machine wasn't just quick, it was smart, adaptable, global in slow motion, and precise enough to keep whole continents fed on the move. While nobles dined on roasted peacocks, peasants built something more enduring, a fast food network running on bread, beer, and brilliance. Imagine a table where the plate itself was lunch. Trenchers, slabs of stale bread carved into bowls, soaked up stew until they became edible sponges of flavor. No dishwashing, no waste, no delay. Eat your meal, eat your plate, move on. In towns like London, vendors ladled thick soups into trenchers and handed them to workers passing through muddy streets. Clean up none. It's the medieval version of biodegradable packaging, centuries before paper cups. Even the leftover crusts, steeped in gravy, found their way to dogs or beggars. Nothing wasted in a world where calories meant survival. Morning meals starred liquid. Grains boiled into gruel bubble in iron pots. Steam wrapping around low-roofed cottages. Oats, barley, rye, whatever survived winter, become breakfast for entire families. Each bowl is hot, dense, and comforting, enough to power hours of field labor. The trick is simplicity. No measuring, no recipe, just stirring while the day wakes up. When there's honey or dried fruit, it's celebration. When there's only salt, it's still warmth. Villagers gather around shared pots, gossip mixing with steam, bowls passing hand to hand. It's more than food. It's a morning ritual, binding the community tighter than any prayer. Out in the fields, lunch travels with you. The Cornish pasty, a die-shaped parcel of meat, potato, and onion, slips into a pocket like a medieval power bar. Its thick, crimped edge acts as a handle for miners' filthy hands. A clever safety feature centuries before food-grade gloves. Inside, steam builds, slow cooking the filling as you work. Some miners even leave the crusts for the knockers. The spirits they believed guarded them underground, a superstition baked right into the meal. The pasty isn't luxury, it's armor-plated practicality. Drop it, carry it, eat it cold or hot. It's still a full meal that survives a shift below the earth. Street life hums with other quick bites. Pies line the stalls, not the airy desserts of grand halls, but thick-crusted coffins packed with salted meats or root vegetables. Vendors balance wooden trays, shouting over the din, the air thick with spice and smoke. Chestnut sellers stand by church steps, fires glowing in iron braziers, shells popping open to reveal golden flesh. People gather not just for warmth but for talk, news traded, bargains whispered. The scent alone sells the moment. Each vendor is a one-person marketing department armed with heat, aroma, and charm. Bread remains the backbone. Before dawn, bakers shovel dough into communal ovens, marking loaves with house symbols to tell them apart later. The poor eat dark rye, the rich flaunt pale wheat. Yet the difference isn't only status. Darker loaves stay fresh longer, denser, stronger. A hard heel of bread becomes a spoon, a plate, a bargaining chip, a peace offering. Even stale bread has value. Dipped in ale, simmered into pudding, or carved into new trenchers. Guilds enforce fairness, the weight of each loaf inspected. Dishonest bakers humiliated in the stocks, their loaves hung around their necks as warning. Justice, medieval style, and the drink that ties it all together. Small beer, the lifeblood of medieval hydration. Not a party drink, but purified safety in a mug. Low alcohol, high trust, brewed fast, ready in days. Children drink it, monks bless it, farmers gulp it between furrows. It's calories, water, and morale in one frothy gulp. Brewing becomes women's science, each household guarding its yeast, perfecting its blend of oats or barley. The smell of malt and wet grain fills villages like morning coffee. It's cheap, it's communal, it's survival disguised as refreshment. By dusk, the rhythm of eating slows into sharing. Pots of pottage, thick stews of whatever's on hand, simmer over hearths all day, deepening in flavor and meaning. Wilted greens, root vegetables, bones with scraps of meat, herbs if fortune smiles. It's not pretty, but it's nourishing, and it stretches with water when guests arrive. Families dip wooden spoons into the same bubbling pot, steam rising as laughter fills the room. Around that single dish, arguments fade, Stories unfold. Promises are made. No one leaves hungry or alone. That's the real genius of medieval fast food. Not just speed, but connection. Every loaf, pie, and cup of beer was a thread in the web of daily survival. A system so efficient, it fed entire nations without waste, branding, or machinery. It's history's quiet empire of flavor and necessity, where the street vendor and the plowman ate from the same fire. And the meal was never just food. It was proof that life, even hard and hungry, could still taste good. By the time evening cloaked the streets, the medieval world smelled like dinner. Smoke curled from thatched chimneys. Spiced steam drifted down alleys, and the sound of sizzling fat whispered through the cold. The markets, once deafening with barter and laughter, softened to a hum. The afterglow of a city fed and satisfied. Vendors packed their tools, scraping the last bits of gravy into clay pots, saving drippings for tomorrow's stew. Even the cobblestones seemed to hold the scent of roasted meat and yeast. This wasn't chaos anymore. It was rhythm, the heartbeat of survival, repeating itself every day. As dependable as sunrise. Inside cottages, the glow of the hearth painted faces in gold. Families gathered around wooden tables, bread torn by hand, stew ladled into shared bowls. The air shimmered with life, not luxury, but warmth earned through sweat and salt. Every ingredient on that table carried a story. Grain sown months ago, a pig raised in the yard, a jar of pickled cabbage that had waited patiently through winter. Food wasn't just sustenance, it was memory. The system worked because it had to. Every crumb, every drop, recycled into tomorrow's meal. Waste was a sin when hunger slept next door. Look closer, and you'd see the precision hidden beneath simplicity. The baker could judge temperature by the color of embers. The brewer read fermentation by scent alone. Housewives measured time by how the bubbles rose in a pot. No thermometers, no recipes, just instinct, passed from parent to child. Every task was a form of craftsmanship. The way a knife sliced way dough responded to kneading. The way herbs layered into flavor without overpowering the pot. Cooking wasn't separate from science. It was science, written in muscle memory and patience. Outside, the streets cooled, torches flickered, and silence replaced the market's roar. But the system never really stopped. The same salt that preserved meat also bought loyalty and trade. The same beer barrels that quenched thirst built friendships and trust. And somewhere, in the next village over, another baker was already kneading tomorrow's bread by candlelight. The medieval fast food empire didn't need logos or golden arches. It needed only hunger, fire, and human hands. What made it remarkable wasn't speed alone. It was balance. A whole society had learned to synchronize with nature rather than fight it. Fields rotated to rest the soil. Animals fertilized the same ground they grazed. Rainwater channeled through wooden gutters, cooled barrels, and fed gardens. Even scraps, bones, peels, ashes found second lives as tools or compost. Nothing existed in isolation. Everything fed something else. That's why the food lasted, why the people endured. They weren't just eating to live. They were participating in an ecosystem designed for continuity. And within that loop, joy found its way in. Harvest festivals turned meals into music. Bread ovens glowed like beacons, inviting neighbors to celebrate abundance. Children danced around bonfires with oatcakes in hand. Lovers shared pasties under autumn skies. Travelers traded pickles for tales of distant towns. Eating became a communal heartbeat, not a private affair. Food didn't just fill stomachs, it filled time, conversation, and memory. By the time the candles burned low, the fire dimmed, and the last loaf cooled on the table, the world outside seemed to hold its breath. Tomorrow, it would begin again. The fields, the mills, the ovens, the markets. The rhythm that fed millions with no machines, no electricity, and no waste would keep turning. Powered by skill, cooperation, and pure necessity. The medieval fast food miracle wasn't a joke or a gimmick. It was one of humanity's quiet triumphs. A system built on patience, shared labor, and the beautiful art of making something from nothing. And that's the hidden brilliance of it all. A world without modern convenience. Yet everything moved with the precision of a clock. Before dawn, the first fires were lit. By mid-morning, the town square had turned into a roaring kitchen. By nightfall, every belly was fed. There were no refrigerators humming in the corner. No grocery stores with endless shelves. And yet food flowed through the medieval world, like blood through veins. Local, fresh, fast. It wasn't a miracle. It was mastery born of repetition and cooperation. The peasants didn't invent fast food by accident. They engineered it out of necessity. When life demanded constant motion, they learned to cook meals that traveled, preserve themselves, and fit the rhythm of labor. Bread wasn't a side, it was technology. Beer wasn't luxury, it was safety. Salt wasn't seasoning, it was survival. Every meal was a compact between nature and human hands, a small victory against decay, hunger, and time itself. Walk through a medieval market in your mind. Iron pots steaming, vendors calling prices, the hiss of meat dripping onto coals, the perfume of baking bread cutting through the smoke. People move like clockwork, the brewer, the baker, the pieman, the farmer, all part of a living machine that never stops. The same rhythm hums from castle kitchens to roadside stalls, from nuns' gardens to sailors' decks. Everything is connected. That connection extends beyond food. It's a map of how civilization adapted. Each salt merchant's guarded road, each monastery's careful seed jar, each alewife's wooden vat is part of the same vast web. When harvest fails in one county, trade routes fill the gap. When meat spoils in summer, vinegar saves it. When cold cuts through winter, fermentation fights back. Innovation isn't a luxury of the few, it's the instinct of survival written into every hearthfire and every shared meal. Even the smallest choices carry genius. A crust thick enough to hold stew becomes both plate and dessert. A pie crimped just right becomes both lunchbox and brand mark. A handful of herbs transforms preservation into cuisine, and a barrel of small beer becomes a social glue that keeps tempers cool and neighbors close. Their system had elegance. No waste, no plastic, no pollution, just cycles. Grain feeds people, people feed animals, animals feed soil, soil feeds grain again. It's not just medieval sustainability, it's the ancestor of everything we now call green. When we talk about fast food today, we think of speed and convenience. But back then, it meant something purer. Speed without sacrifice. The baker rising early. The brewer watching the yeast rise and fall. The pieman shouting in the street. The chestnut vendor flipping coals with bare hands. It was fast because they were always ready. It was food because it was sacred, made by people who knew that taste and time were the same currency. As night deepens, the last taverns close. The streets smell of ash and bread. A baker wipes flour from his arms. A brewer sets his next batch to ferment. A child falls asleep full, for the first time in days. Outside, the wind moves through the market stalls like a sigh, stirring faint echoes of sizzling oil and laughter. It's a quiet victory, the kind history rarely writes about. Because medieval fast food wasn't just clever, it was civilization in motion. Every loaf, pie, beer, and trencher told the same story, that even in an age of mud and muscle, humanity refused to stand still. They built a world that fed itself, one hot, fragrant meal at a time, and in doing so, they invented not just fast food, but the idea that everyone, no matter how poor or tired, deserved something warm, quick, and good.